The morning frost crunched beneath Lieutenant Commander Olivia Westbrook's boots as she completed her final security check around Naval Station Breckenridge. 15 years of dedicated service had made these midnight patrols second nature. Same route, same thorough inspection, same unwavering commitment that had earned her the respect of every sailor under her command. Sweat beaded on her brow despite the December chill, but her breathing remained steady, a testament to years of maintaining peak physical readiness in the Navy's elite security division. As she noted the time on her watch, Olivia knew that in less than 24 hours, everything she had worked for would be threatened by a commander who had never trusted her from the beginning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Perfect timing. She had exactly 90 minutes to shower, review the suspicious security logs she'd been tracking, and prepare for the morning briefing. The base was beginning to stir around her, junior officers hurrying to their stations, enlisted personnel moving with purpose toward their assignments. The distant sound of a helicopter landing pad being prepared echoed across the yard. Naval Station Breckenridge operated with military precision, and Olivia had been one of its most dedicated officers for the past 7 years. Her quarters reflected her methodical nature, everything arranged with purpose and efficiency. The walls displayed her commendations alongside photographs from deployments in the Persian Gulf and Mediterranean. Images of her security team conducting successful anti-terrorism operations, their faces tired but proud. In one particularly meaningful photograph, she stood beside Captain Morgan Fletcher, her former commanding officer, who had been transferred unexpectedly 3 months ago following disagreements with the new base commander. After a quick shower, Olivia donned her uniform with practiced precision. Each insignia, badge, and ribbon told the story of her service, a narrative of excellence, leadership, and unwavering dedication to duty. As she secured her service cap, Olivia felt the familiar sense of pride that came with wearing the uniform. The Security Operations Center hummed with activity as she entered the secure facility. Lieutenant Commander Westbrook called Ensign Daniel Carter her young but capable assistant. "Commander Reynolds wants to see you in his office immediately." Olivia paused, coffee cup halfway to her lips. Emergency meetings weren't unusual in naval security, but something in Daniel's tone suggested this was different. "Did he mention what it's regarding?" "No, ma'am, but Admiral Harrington is with him," Daniel replied, his voice carefully neutral. "And there's a civilian I don't recognize." Olivia felt a flicker of concern. Admiral Harrington rarely made appearances outside the command center, and his presence usually signaled something significant. Perhaps it was related to the anomalies she'd been tracking in the security protocols, discrepancies that had been nagging at her analytical mind for weeks. "I'll head over now." "Push the morning security briefing back 30 minutes, Olivia instructed, grabbing her portfolio of classified reports. Something told her she might need them. As Olivia walked across the base toward headquarters, she noticed something unusual. Personnel she'd worked with for years suddenly found reasons to avoid eye contact or change direction when they saw her approaching. Chief Petty Officer Ramirez, her senior non-commissioned officer for the past 5 years, actually crossed the parade ground rather than pass her on the sidewalk. The strange behavior sent warning signals through her trained mind, but she couldn't identify the threat. The walk to Commander Reynolds' office seemed longer than usual. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parade ground, and Olivia found herself wondering if this was somehow connected to her recent security assessments. She had flagged several inconsistencies in the base's perimeter monitoring systems, patterns that suggested possible vulnerabilities or, worse, deliberate tampering. Commander Reynolds, secretary, looked up with an expression Olivia couldn't quite read, part sympathy, part discomfort. Instead of the usual pleasantries, she simply gestured toward the closed office door. "They're waiting for you, Lieutenant Commander." Olivia knocked twice and entered. Commander Reynolds sat behind his desk, his usually animated demeanor replaced by cold formality. Admiral Harrington stood beside him, his face an unreadable mask. A third man, in an expensive civilian suit, stood by the window, his back to the door, clearly someone from outside the military hierarchy. "Lieutenant Commander Westbrook," Commander Reynolds said without rising, at ease. Olivia assumed the position, hands clasped behind her back, noting the unusual tension in the room. None of the men were making eye contact with her. and the atmosphere felt more like a tribunal than a routine briefing. "I'll get straight to the point," Reynolds continued, his voice lacking its usual warmth. He slid a manila folder across the desk toward her. "These are your discharge papers, effective immediately." The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. For a moment she was certain she had misheard. 20 years of exemplary service, countless commendations, and unwavering loyalty. It couldn't end like this, with a single sentence delivered in a sterile office. "Sir," she managed, her voice carefully controlled despite the shock coursing through her system. "With all due respect, I believe I'm entitled to know the reason for this action." Admiral Harrington spoke for the first time, his voice cutting through the room like ice. "You are entitled to nothing, Lieutenant Commander. This comes from well above my pay grade. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. The civilian finally turned from the window, revealing a face Olivia didn't recognize. Sharp features, cold eyes, and the bearing of someone accustomed to wielding power from the shadows. "Your security clearance has been revoked," he said in a tone devoid of emotion. "You have until 1,800 hours to clear the base and surrender all military property." Olivia struggled to maintain her composure. 20 years of discipline warring with the injustice of the situation. "Is there an investigation, a hearing, some form of due process I'm entitled to?" "Not in matters of national security," the civilian replied coolly. Commander Reynolds finally met her eyes, and she saw something that looked almost like regret before he spoke again. "You'll need to surrender your credentials and sidearm now, Lieutenant Commander." With movements that felt mechanical, Olivia removed her ID, placed it on the desk, followed by her service weapon. 20 years of dedication, sacrifice, and service reduced to a sterile transaction in a room that suddenly felt like a tomb. "That will be all, Ms. Westbrook," Admiral Harrington said, emphasizing her new civilian status with unmistakable finality. "You're dismissed." As Olivia stood to leave, the weight of her destroyed career settled on her shoulders like a lead blanket. At the door, she turned back one last time, searching the faces of the three men for any sign of explanation or remorse. She found nothing but cold indifference. Outside the office, the hallway seemed unnaturally quiet. Word traveled fast on a naval base, and Olivia realized that her colleagues' strange behavior that morning had been because they already knew. She was radioactive now, a person to be avoided, shunned, forgotten. The walk back to her quarters felt like a march to execution. Every step took her further from the life she had built, the career she had devoted her soul to, and the identity that had defined her for 2 decades. But even as her world crumbled around her, one thought echoed in her mind. There had to be more to this story. Someone didn't just erase 15 years of exemplary service without a reason, and Olivia Westbrook was going to find out what that reason was, even if it cost her everything she had left. The rest of that morning passed in a haze of humiliation and disbelief. Olivia moved through her quarters like a ghost, mechanically packing her life into boxes while trying to process what had just happened. Every item she touched, commendations, photographs, personal effects accumulated over 15 years, now felt like evidence of a life that had been declared worthless with the stroke of a pen. A soft knock on her door interrupted her packing. She opened it to find Ensign Daniel Carter standing in the hallway, his young face twisted with confusion and concern. "Lieutenant Commander, Ms. Westbrook," Daniel said quietly, glancing around to ensure they weren't being overheard. "This doesn't make any sense. Your record is impeccable. You've saved more lives than anyone in the security division." Olivia felt a surge of gratitude for the young officer's loyalty, but also fear for his career. "Daniel, you shouldn't be here. Association with me right now could damage your standing." "I don't care about my standing," Daniel replied with surprising intensity. "This is wrong, and everyone knows it." Chief Ramirez is furious. Half the security staff is talking about requesting transfers. The information provided a small comfort, but Olivia knew the reality of military hierarchy. The decision came from Admiral Harrington himself. Fighting it will be career suicide for anyone involved. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice to barely above a whisper. "There's something you should know. Yesterday, after you flagged those anomalies in the security protocols, I saw Commander Reynolds make 4 separate calls to Washington. He looked terrified, ma'am. I've never seen him like that. Olivia's analytical mind immediately began processing this information. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. She'd identified potential security breaches in the base's monitoring systems. And less than 24 hours later, she was being forcibly removed from service without explanation. "Daniel, I need you to listen carefully," Olivia said, her voice taking on the commanding tone she'd used in crisis situations. "Whatever is happening here goes beyond normal naval procedures. You need to be very careful about who you trust and what you say. If someone asks about our conversation, we never had this conversation," Daniel finished. "I understand, ma'am." After Daniel left, Olivia continued packing with renewed purpose. If her discharge was connected to her security work, then someone was very concerned about what she might have discovered. The base monitoring protocols had contained subtle inconsistencies, access records that didn't align with personnel locations, surveillance blind spots that shouldn't exist, and equipment maintenance patterns that made no operational sense. By noon, word of her discharge had spread throughout the base like wildfire. As Olivia made her way to the administration building to complete her out-processing, she noticed the reactions of her fellow officers. Some looked away in embarrassment or fear. Others stared with curiosity or pity. A few nodded with subtle respect, acknowledging that they didn't believe whatever charges had led to her removal. The administration clerk processed her paperwork with cold efficiency, avoiding eye contact as he explained the forfeiture of her pension and benefits pending investigation. When Olivia asked what investigation, he claimed ignorance and simply pushed more forms across the desk for her signature. "Sign here acknowledging that you understand the terms of your discharge," he said, pointing to multiple highlighted sections. Olivia read carefully, noting the language about security violations and, quote, potential criminal charges. The implications were devastating. Not only was her career over, but her reputation would be permanently destroyed. Future employers would see a dishonorable discharge and assume the worst. As she signed the final document, the clerk's expression softened slightly. "Lieutenant Commander," he said quietly, "for what it's worth, nobody here believes you did whatever they're accusing you of. You've always been one of the good ones." The unexpected kindness nearly broke through Olivia's carefully maintained composure. "Thank you," she managed. Outside the administration building, dark clouds had gathered, matching her mood as she walked toward the main gate. Her path took her past the base memorial wall, where her name was engraved among the distinguished service members for her actions during a counter-terrorism operation in the Mediterranean. The irony wasn't lost on her. This morning, her name had been synonymous with honor and courage. By evening, it would be associated with disgrace and betrayal. At the personnel office, she was informed that her transportation privileges had been revoked along with her credentials. The young petty officer delivering the news looked genuinely distressed. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I've been ordered to confiscate your base parking pass and vehicle registration." Olivia handed over the documents without protest, adding transportation to the growing list of basic dignities being stripped away. The nearest town was 5 miles away, and she would be walking there with everything she could carry packed into a single duffel bag. As she approached the main gate, Olivia noticed an unusual amount of activity. Additional security personnel had been posted, and several vehicles with government plates were parked near the guard station. The sight triggered her security training. Someone was very interested in her departure. The gate guards checked her dismissal papers with unnecessary scrutiny. Petty Officer Rodriguez, a man she'd known for 4 years and who had always shown her respect, now avoided eye contact as he performed his duties with robotic precision. "Procedure requires me to destroy your military identification," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Olivia watched as he cut her ID card in half, the pieces falling into a wastebasket like fragments of her broken career. "Procedure for dishonorable discharge," he added, the words sounding like they tasted bitter in his mouth. The word dishonorable landed like a physical blow. 15 years of exemplary service, and this would be her legacy. Not retirement honors or gratitude for service, but shame and suspicion that would follow her for the rest of her life. As Olivia stepped through the gate, officially a civilian for the first time in her adult life, she felt the weight of injustice settle on her shoulders. The rain that had been threatening all morning finally began to fall, as if the sky itself was mourning the death of her naval career. She had walked less than half a mile when she became aware of vehicles following her at a distance. The training that had kept her alive through multiple security operations kicked in, and she began analyzing her surroundings with tactical precision. Someone was very interested in where she was going and what she might do next. The rain fell harder, soaking through her civilian clothes and chilling her to the bone. But as she walked along the fence line of the base that had been her home for 7 years, Olivia Westbrook made a silent promise to herself. She would find out why 15 years of loyal service had been erased with a signature, and she would make sure that whoever was responsible faced the consequences of their actions. Behind her, Naval Station Breckenridge continued its daily operations, but Olivia knew that something was fundamentally wrong within its walls. The question was whether she would live long enough to expose it. The surveillance team following Olivia wasn't particularly subtle. 2 black sedans rotating positions along the coastal highway, maintaining visual contact while trying to appear inconspicuous. Her years of security training made their presence obvious, even through the rain-streaked windows of the bus she'd finally managed to board after walking 5 miles in the downpour. She'd used the last of her cash to buy a ticket to Norfolk, reasoning that a larger city would provide more options for disappearing if necessary. The bus was nearly empty except for a few travelers who looked as down on their luck as she felt. Olivia sat in the back, watching the vehicles in the side mirror and trying to piece together the puzzle of her destruction. The timing was too precise to be coincidental. Yesterday morning, she'd identified anomalies in the base security protocols that suggested unauthorized access. Yesterday afternoon, she'd submitted her concerns through proper channels. This morning, she'd been discharged without explanation or due process. Someone with significant power had moved very quickly to remove her from the equation. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Waterfront Diner on Harbor Street in Norfolk. 7 p.m. Come alone. A friend who knows what really happened to Captain Fletcher. Olivia stared at the message, her heart racing. Morgan Fletcher had been transferred suddenly 3 months ago, his reassignment coming within days of him raising concerns about changes to the base security protocols. His transfer had never made sense to her. Morgan was too experienced, too respected to be shuffled off to a desk job in Washington without explanation. But raising questions about personnel decisions was a career-ending move, so she buried her doubts and moved on. Now someone was suggesting they had information about Morgan's transfer, information connected to her current situation. It could be a trap, but Olivia had already lost everything she had to lose. If someone wanted to eliminate her, they wouldn't need elaborate schemes. They had already proven they could destroy her with paperwork. The bus pulled into Norfolk as evening fell. Olivia's surveillance detail followed at a discreet distance as she walked through the downtown area, making several stops to confirm their presence before heading toward the meeting location. The Waterfront Diner on Harbor Street was a small, dimly lit establishment with cracked vinyl booths and the kind of atmosphere that encouraged quiet conversations. Olivia arrived 15 minutes early and selected a corner booth with clear sight lines to all entrances. At exactly 7 p.m., a woman in her 50s with graying hair and tired eyes approached her table. "Lieutenant Commander Westbrook?" the woman asked quietly. "Not anymore," Olivia replied. "And you are?" "Rebecca Townsend. I was Morgan Fletcher's intelligence contact during his security review 3 months ago." Rebecca sat down across from Olivia. Her movements suggested military or intelligence training despite her civilian appearance. "I left the agency 2 months after Morgan was transferred because I couldn't live with the lies anymore." Olivia's pulse quickened. "What lies?" Rebecca looked around the diner before continuing in a low voice. "Morgan wasn't transferred because of budget cuts or reorganization. He was removed because he discovered that someone in our chain of command was selling access to Naval Station Breckenridge. Multiple security systems had been compromised, and Morgan had identified the pattern." The revelation hit Olivia like a physical blow. Who ordered his transfer? That's what Morgan was trying to determine when they silenced him. But he managed to get a message to me before he left. Names of people he suspected were involved in the security breaches. Rebecca slid a small piece of paper across the table. Commander Reynolds was one of them. Olivia stared at the paper, her mind racing. Commander Reynolds had been in the room this morning when she was discharged. He'd been the one to hand her the papers and revoke her security clearance. If he was involved in selling access to the base, then her analysis of the security protocols had gotten too close to exposing him. "Why are you telling me this now?" Olivia asked. "Because you're the only person with the skills and clearance to have noticed what Morgan noticed. When I heard about your discharge today, I knew they were cleaning house." Rebecca's expression grew urgent. "You're in serious danger, Lieutenant Commander. If they're willing to quietly remove a decorated officer like Morgan Fletcher, they won't hesitate to eliminate a discharged sailor who knows too much." Olivia felt the weight of this situation settling on her. She wasn't just a victim of an unfair discharge. She was a witness to treason who had already been marked for elimination. The surveillance team outside wasn't just watching her. They were waiting for the right moment to act. "What do you suggest I do?" Olivia asked. Rebecca stood to leave but paused at the table. "There are still good people in the system, people who believe in what we swore to protect. Find them before the bad ones find you." She handed Olivia a business card with only a phone number written on it. "This number connects to someone who might be able to help, but be careful who you trust." After Rebecca left, Olivia sat in the diner for another hour, watching the street through the window. The surveillance vehicles were still there, repositioning occasionally but maintaining their watch. She was trapped in a game where the rules had changed without warning, and the stakes were her life. As she finally stood to leave, Olivia's phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "They're moving tonight. You have maybe 2 hours. The number Rebecca gave you. Use it now." Olivia's blood ran cold. Whoever was sending these messages had been watching her meeting with Rebecca, which meant they had intelligence capabilities that extended beyond normal law enforcement or naval security. She was being protected by someone, but she had no idea who or why. Outside the diner, she walked purposefully toward the bus station while using storefront windows to monitor her surveillance detail. They were getting closer, their movements becoming less discreet. The endgame was approaching, and Olivia realized she had reached the point of no return. In the privacy of a bus station restroom, she dialed the number Rebecca had given her. After 3 rings, a man's voice answered with a simple, "Yes?" "Rebecca Townsend said you might be able to help someone in trouble," Olivia said carefully. There was a long pause before the man replied. "Lieutenant Commander Westbrook? We've been waiting for your call. Stay exactly where you are. Help is coming." The line went dead, leaving Olivia staring at her phone in confusion. Whoever was on the other end had known her name and rank despite her discharge. More importantly, they had been expecting her call, which suggested a level of planning and intelligence gathering that went far beyond anything Rebecca could have organized. As she left the restroom, Olivia noticed that the surveillance team had moved closer, with at least 2 operatives now inside the bus station. They were no longer trying to be subtle, which meant the situation was about to escalate dramatically. Olivia checked her watch. 8:30 p.m. Whatever was going to happen would happen soon. She found a seat with her back to a wall and clear sightlines to all approaches, settling in to wait for help that might never come while being watched by people who definitely wanted her dead. The next hour would determine whether Olivia Westbrook had a future at all, or whether she would simply become another casualty in a war she was only beginning to understand. Olivia didn't have to wait long. At 9:15 p.m., the bus station's lights flickered and went out, plunging the building into darkness except for the dim glow of emergency lighting. In the confusion that followed, she heard rapid footsteps and muffled voices as her surveillance team repositioned in the dark. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a temporary power outage," announced a station employee over a battery-powered megaphone. "Please remain calm while we restore service." Through the darkened windows, Olivia could see that the entire city block had lost power, far too coordinated to be a coincidence. Someone with serious capabilities was manipulating the situation, and she couldn't tell if they were friend or foe. A figure approached her in the darkness, moving with the controlled precision of military training. Olivia tensed, ready to fight or run, until she heard a familiar voice whisper, "Lieutenant Commander, it's time to go." She recognized the voice immediately. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, who had served under her command at Breckenridge before transferring to a classified assignment a year ago. But according to the official notification Olivia had received, Sarah had resigned from the Navy 6 months ago to take a private sector job. "Sarah, she whispered back, hardly believing her eyes as her vision adjusted to the dim lighting. "We'll talk later," Sarah replied urgently. "Right now, we need to move. The people watching you aren't just surveillance. They're a cleanup crew." Sarah led her through the darkened station toward a service exit, moving with the stealth and precision that had made her one of Olivia's best security officers. Behind them, Olivia could hear confused voices and the sound of people stumbling in the darkness, but no immediate signs of pursuit. They emerged into an alley where a nondescript van waited with its engine running. "Get in," Sarah instructed, opening the rear door. Inside the van, Olivia found herself face to face with two other people she recognized. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper, who had supposedly transferred to a different base 10 months ago, and Commander Jack Donovan, who had allegedly retired from active duty last year. "Welcome to the Ghost Protocol," Ryan said with a grim smile. Population growing daily, Olivia's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. "You're all supposed to be gone. Transferred, retired, or resigned. What the hell is going on? We're part of an off-the-books operation," Commander Donovan explained, as the van pulled away from the bus station. "When we discovered the extent of the security breaches, we realized the corruption went so high that normal channels were compromised. So we went underground. Someone has been systematically selling access to naval facilities," Sarah added. "Not just routine security breaches, clearance codes, patrol schedules, sensor blind spots. Good people have been compromised because of these breaches." Olivia absorbed this information as the van navigated through Norfolk's darkened streets. "How many of you are there?" 15 active members at last count," Ryan replied. "All officially transferred, resigned, or retired. It's the only way to operate outside the compromised command structure." "And you've been watching me?" Olivia asked. "Since yesterday morning," Commander Donovan confirmed. "When you flagged those anomalies in the security protocols, it triggered responses we've been monitoring." Commander Reynolds made 4 calls to a known suspicious number within an hour of receiving your analysis. The van turned into an industrial district and pulled into a warehouse that looked abandoned from the outside. Inside, however, Olivia discovered a sophisticated operations center with computers, communications equipment, and enough supplies to support extended operations. "Welcome to Operation Lighthouse," Commander Donovan said as they entered the facility. "We shine light on the shadows that threaten what we swore to defend." Olivia looked around the operations center, noting the professional setup and the faces of sailors she had thought were gone from service. "Why did you recruit me? Why not just let me disappear?" "Because you're the key to everything," Sarah explained, leading her to a large display screen covered with photos, documents, and connecting lines that formed a complex web. Morgan Fletcher wasn't the only one who died trying to expose this network, but before he was transferred, he managed to compile evidence that proves the scope of the conspiracy. The display showed photographs of high-ranking officers, government officials, and civilians, all connected by lines indicating relationships and financial transfers. At the center of the web was Commander Reynolds, but lines extended upward to figures Olivia didn't recognize. Morgan hid the evidence before his transfer. Ryan continued. "But it's encrypted with a code based on security protocols that only someone with your specific training could decipher." Olivia studied the display, her analytical mind already working through the implications. "What kind of evidence?" "Access logs, communication intercepts, surveillance records that were deliberately altered," Commander Donovan replied. "Enough to bring down the entire network and expose how many naval operations were compromised because of these traitors." "Where is this evidence?" Olivia asked. Sarah handed her a secure tablet. Morgan embedded it in routine security reports that were filed in the central database. To anyone else, they look like standard protocol summaries, but to someone who understands his methods and knows what to look for. Olivia powered up the tablet and began examining the files Sarah had loaded. Even at first glance, she could see patterns that others would miss. Subtle variations in terminology, numerical sequences that seemed random but weren't, and references that appeared routine but contained hidden meaning. "This could take days to fully decode," she said after reviewing several documents. "We don't have days," Ryan replied grimly. Our intelligence suggests the network is planning something big, a final operation that will compromise multiple naval facilities and eliminate any remaining threats to their activities, including us. They know we exist, even if they don't know our exact identities or location, Sarah added. It's only a matter of time before they track us down. Olivia set down the tablet and looked around at the faces of her fellow sailors, men and women who had sacrificed their official careers to continue serving their country in the shadows. "What do you need me to do?" Commander Donovan stepped forward. "We need you to break Morgan's code and help us identify every member of this network. Then we're going to expose them all, regardless of rank or position. And if we're caught, we're already gone according to official records," Ryan said with a sardonic smile. "Makes it hard for them to destroy us twice." Olivia picked up the tablet again, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. 24 hours ago, she had been a respected security officer with a secure future. Now she was a ghost sailor in an underground war against traitors who had infiltrated the highest levels of naval command. "I'll need complete access to Morgan's personnel files, security reports, and any personal effects that survived his transfer," she said, her voice taking on the professional tone she'd used in countless briefings. "Already prepared," Sarah replied, handing her additional encrypted drives. "Everything we could recover is on these devices." As Olivia began her work, she realized that her discharge hadn't been the end of her naval career. It had been the beginning of the most important mission of her life. Somewhere in Morgan Fletcher's hidden code was the key to exposing a conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of national security. The question was whether she could break the code before the traitors found Operation Lighthouse and silenced them all permanently. For the next 16 hours, Olivia worked with an intensity she hadn't felt since her most critical counterterrorism operations. Morgan Fletcher's encrypted evidence was hidden in plain sight within hundreds of routine security reports. But finding the pattern required intimate knowledge of his methods and thinking. She'd known Morgan for 5 years, served with him in multiple security operations, and understood his analytical approach better than anyone alive. He had a habit of embedding backup plans within backup plans, and his mind worked in security patterns that others found impenetrable. "Coffee's getting cold," Sarah said, setting a fresh cup beside her workstation at 3 a.m. Morgan always used the Fibonacci sequence for his primary encryptions, Olivia murmured, barely looking up from the screen. "But he'd modify it based on security zone designations or access level numbers. I'm close to something here." The breakthrough came at dawn. Hidden within a seemingly routine security protocol from Breckenridge, Olivia found a sequence of numbers that matched access codes from 3 different security zones that had all been compromised by unauthorized entries. "Got it," she announced, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. The team gathered around her workstation as she explained the pattern. Morgan embedded access records within routine security protocols. "Look at this. Entry times that correspond to unauthorized access, dates that match security breaches, and identification numbers disguised as equipment serial numbers." Commander Donovan studied the decoded information with growing alarm. These breaches total over 50 unauthorized entries across 2 years. Someone has been making a fortune selling access to our secure facilities. "It gets worse," Olivia continued, pulling up additional decoded files. Morgan tracked the information flow and identified how the access was being sold. They weren't just selling completed security plans. They were providing real-time intelligence during active operations. Sarah leaned closer to examine the data. "That explains how the terrorist cell was able to target the Admiral's convoy last year. The enemy had our exact routes, timing, and security measures before we even deployed. And this proves Commander Reynolds was at the center of it," Ryan added, pointing to access records that showed regular pattern modifications to a security protocol registered under his authentication that traced back to multiple breaches. Olivia felt a mixture of vindication and horror as she continued decoding Morgan's evidence. Her analysis had been correct. There was a massive security breach within their command structure, but the scope of the betrayal was far worse than she had imagined. "There's more," she said, opening another decoded file. Morgan identified at least 6 other officers involved in the network, including Captain Lawrence from Naval Intelligence and Admiral Harrington from Fleet Command. "Harrington?" Commander Donovan looked shocked. "He has access to everything. Every operation, every facility, every ongoing naval deployment in the region. Which explains how they've stayed ahead of us, Sarah said grimly. They know our moves before we make them. Olivia continued working through the decoded files, each revelation more damaging than the last. Morgan had meticulously documented the network's operations, tracking access patterns, communications, and the specific security protocols that had been compromised. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Here's what we need, she said finally, compiling the most critical evidence into a single presentation. Access records proving unauthorized entries, communication intercepts showing coordination with hostile actors, and operational reports that prove how the leaked information was used against naval personnel. How do we get this evidence to people who can act on it? Ryan asked. That's the problem, Commander Donovan replied. We can't trust normal channels because we don't know how deep the corruption goes. For all we know, the people we report to could be part of the network. Olivia had been thinking about this problem since she'd started decoding the evidence. We need to go public. Full exposure through multiple channels simultaneously: media, Congress, Naval Inspector General's office, and fleet leadership. Make it impossible to suppress or discredit. That's a career-ending move for anyone still officially active, Sarah pointed out. Good thing most of us are already gone, Ryan replied with dark humor. There's something else, Olivia said, pulling up the final decoded file. Morgan discovered they're planning something called Operation Blackout, a coordinated action to eliminate all remaining threats to their network. The room fell silent as they read Morgan's analysis. Operation Blackout involved identifying and eliminating anyone who might have evidence of the security breaches, including family members and associates who might have been given information. When? Commander Donovan asked. According to this, within the next 48 hours, Olivia replied. They're accelerating the timeline because they know someone is getting close to exposing them. Us, Sarah said simply. Which means we're running out of time, Ryan added. We need to move now before they can implement their cleanup operation. Olivia looked around at her fellow ghost sailors, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt burning in her chest. They had lost their official lives and careers, but they had gained something more valuable: the ability to act without constraint against enemies of the nation. I need secure communication equipment and access to verified contact information for specific journalists and congressional committee members, she said, her voice taking on the commanding tone she'd used in crisis situations. We're going to expose this entire network in one coordinated strike that they can't stop or suppress. What about our safety? Sarah asked. We're already targets, Olivia replied. Our only chance of survival is to expose them before they can implement Operation Blackout. Once the evidence is public, killing us becomes too obvious and risky. Commander Donovan nodded with approval. Operation Lighthouse was created to shine light on the darkness that threatens our Navy. Time to show these traitors what happens when that light becomes a beacon. As the team began preparing for their final mission, Olivia felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced since her early days in uniform. They were about to risk everything to expose a conspiracy that had cost American lives and compromised national security. But this time, she wasn't fighting as Lieutenant Commander Olivia Westbrook, decorated security officer. She was fighting as a ghost sailor, with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. At 0800 hours the next morning, Olivia and Operation Lighthouse launched their coordinated exposure operation. Using secure communication channels and encrypted file transfers, they simultaneously delivered Morgan Fletcher's decoded evidence to 15 different recipients: 4 investigative journalists from major news networks, 6 congressional committee members with appropriate security clearances, the Naval Inspector General's office, and the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. Package delivered to all primary targets, Sarah reported from her communication station. Confirmation of receipt from 12 out of 15 so far. Media contacts are already asking follow-up questions, Ryan added, monitoring his assigned journalists. They recognize the significance of what we've sent them. Olivia coordinated the operation from the central command position, watching multiple screens that tracked their digital communications and monitored news feeds for any sign that their evidence was being acted upon. The first sign of success came at 0930 hours, when Senator Elizabeth Chambers' office called one of their secure numbers directly. "This is Senator Chambers, Chief of Staff," the voice said when Olivia answered. The senator has reviewed your materials and needs to speak with your source immediately. This is a matter of national security. Understood, Olivia replied carefully. We'll arrange a secure meeting within the hour. But their victory was short-lived. At 10:15 hours, Commander Donovan's monitoring equipment detected unusual activity on naval communication networks around Breckenridge and other installations where the conspirators were stationed. They know, Donovan announced grimly. Emergency meetings being called at multiple commands. Admiral Harrington just canceled all his scheduled appointments and is en route to the Pentagon. How much time do we have? Olivia asked. Based on their response patterns, maybe 5 hours before they implement full damage control, Sarah estimated. After that, anyone connected to this exposure becomes a priority target. Ryan looked up from his station with concerning news. I'm monitoring law enforcement channels. There are federal agents being dispatched to locations connected to our evidence packages. They are moving fast to contain this. Olivia realized they had reached the critical phase of their operation. The evidence was out there, but the network still had enough power to try suppressing it through official channels. They needed to ensure the story became too big to kill. Time for Phase 2, she announced. We go directly to the media with live interviews. They can't suppress what's already been broadcast. The next 3 hours were a blur of coordinated media appearances. Using encrypted video connections and voice modulation to protect their identities, Operation Lighthouse members began appearing on news programs across multiple networks simultaneously. Olivia herself appeared on the most prominent newscast, her voice disguised but her evidence crystal clear. For 2 years, a network of high-ranking naval officers has been selling access to secure facilities to foreign actors, she stated during the live interview. This isn't speculation. We have access records, communication intercepts, and proof that American personnel were put at risk because of these betrayals. The interviewer pressed for details. What kind of evidence are you talking about? Security breaches totaling over 50 unauthorized entries over 2 years. Specific intelligence that was sold and subsequently used against American forces. Communication records proving coordination between these officers and hostile actors. As the interviews aired, Olivia watched the naval communications networks explode with activity. Emergency conference calls, urgent travel orders, and frantic damage control efforts were being coordinated from the highest levels. They're in full panic mode, Donovan reported. Admiral Harrington has been recalled to Washington for immediate consultation. Good, Olivia replied. Panic makes people careless. But the network's response proved they still had significant resources and power. By evening, official statements began appearing that attempted to discredit the evidence and characterize Operation Lighthouse as rogue elements spreading disinformation. A Pentagon spokesperson appeared on the evening news. We are aware of unsubstantiated allegations being made by individuals with questionable motives. The Department of the Navy takes all such claims seriously and is conducting a thorough investigation. They're trying to control the narrative, Sarah observed, making us look like disgruntled former sailors spreading conspiracy theories. Then we need to provide more proof, Olivia decided. Something they can't dismiss or explain away. Ryan had been monitoring communications intercepts throughout the day. I may have something, he announced, pulling up a recorded conversation. We intercepted this call between Admiral Harrington and an unknown party about 30 minutes ago. The audio was clear enough to identify Harrington's voice. The situation is contained for now, but we need to accelerate the timeline. Anyone with access to the Fletcher materials needs to be neutralized immediately. That's direct evidence of conspiracy to commit murder, Olivia said, feeling a surge of vindication mixed with fear. And it proves everything we've been saying, Donovan added. They're not just traitors. They're willing to kill to protect their operation. Olivia made the decision that would determine the outcome of their entire mission. We're releasing this audio immediately. All networks, all platforms, simultaneous broadcast. That's going to put us in immediate danger, Sarah warned. Once this goes public, they'll have no choice but to move against us directly. We're already targets, Olivia replied. But once this evidence is public, we become witnesses, rather than security threats. Killing us after public exposure would only confirm everything we've revealed. The intercepted audio was broadcast across multiple news networks within an hour. The impact was immediate and devastating. Admiral Harrington's own voice planning the elimination of American citizens couldn't be dismissed as disinformation or conspiracy theory. By midnight, congressional leadership was calling for emergency hearings. The FBI announced a formal investigation into the allegations. 3 major news networks were running continuous coverage of what they were calling the largest naval security scandal in modern history. But as Operation Lighthouse monitored the coverage from their warehouse headquarters, they also detected signs that the network was implementing its final contingency plans. Military police units are being mobilized, Donovan reported. Official orders to locate and detain individuals connected to national security breaches. Translation: "They're coming for us," Ryan said. Olivia looked around at her team of ghost sailors, feeling the weight of everything they had accomplished and everything they still risked losing. "How long do we have?" "Based on their mobilization patterns, maybe 90 minutes before they track us to this location," Sarah estimated. "Then we finish this tonight," Olivia decided. "We've exposed the conspiracy and provided the evidence. Now we need to ensure we survive long enough to testify about what we've discovered." As alarms began sounding in the distance and the first news reports appeared about a manhunt for naval fugitives, Operation Lighthouse prepared for their final battle. Not against foreign enemies, but against the traitors who had corrupted the system they'd sworn to defend. The war for the integrity of American naval security was about to reach its climax, and Olivia Westbrook intended to see it through to the end. The warehouse erupted into controlled chaos as Operation Lighthouse prepared for what could be their last stand. Through their monitoring equipment, they could track the approach of multiple federal and military units converging on their location from 3 directions. "Tactical teams, federal marshals, and military police," Donovan reported, watching the displays that showed vehicle movements throughout the industrial district. "They're not taking any chances." "How did they find us so quickly?" Sarah asked while securing sensitive equipment. "Doesn't matter now," Olivia replied, checking her sidearm and tactical vest. "What matters is that we've already won the important battle. The evidence is public, Congress is demanding hearings, and the FBI has opened an investigation." Ryan finished uploading their final evidence packages to secure cloud servers. Deadman Switch is activated. If anything happens to us, additional evidence gets automatically released to 50 different news organizations worldwide. Through the warehouse windows, they could see spotlights beginning to sweep the area as the tactical teams established a perimeter. Olivia estimated they had maybe 10 minutes before the facility was surrounded completely. "We could run," Donovan suggested, though his tone indicated he didn't believe it was a viable option. "Where?" Olivia asked. "They have our biometrics, our known associates, and unlimited resources. Running just delays the inevitable." "So what do you propose?" Sarah asked. Olivia studied the tactical situation on their monitors, her mind working through options with the clarity that had made her an exceptional security officer. "We surrender, but we do it on our terms and in front of cameras." "Surrender?" Ryan looked shocked. "Think about it," Olivia explained. "Right now, the public narrative is that we're heroes who exposed a massive conspiracy. If they kill us in a shootout, we become martyrs, and the story gets bigger. If they arrest us publicly, they have to follow legal procedures and give us due process." "And if they decide to eliminate us quietly after arrest?" Donovan asked. "That's why we do it in front of cameras," Olivia replied. "I'm calling every news organization that's been covering the story. They'll be here within 30 minutes with live broadcast equipment." The sound of helicopters overhead confirmed that their time was running out. Olivia made the calls while her team prepared for surrender, ensuring that their weapons were secured and their hands would be visible when the tactical teams arrived. "Channel 7, Channel 4, and CNN are en route," she reported. "ETA 15 minutes. The tactical teams won't wait that long," Sarah observed, watching through a window as armed figures began positioning around the building. "Then we buy ourselves time," Olivia decided. She activated the warehouse's public address system and spoke into the microphone, her voice carrying clearly to the surrounding forces. "This is Lieutenant Commander Olivia Westbrook, Speaking to the law enforcement and military personnel surrounding this facility, we are the members of Operation Lighthouse who exposed the security conspiracy that has been in the news today. We are prepared to surrender peacefully, but we request that media representatives be present to document our arrest and ensure our safety. A voice responded through a loudspeaker from outside. This is Agent Davidson with the FBI. You are ordered to exit the building immediately with your hands visible. Any delay will be considered resistance. Agent Davidson, Olivia responded. We will comply with your order in exactly 15 minutes, which will allow news media to arrive and document our peaceful surrender. We are not resisting arrest. We are ensuring transparency. The standoff continued for 12 tense minutes. Through their monitoring equipment, Operation Lighthouse could hear the tactical teams receiving conflicting orders. Some voices demanding immediate action, others urging caution given the media attention the case had already received. At exactly 1:47 a.m., the first news van arrived with its satellite equipment and camera crews. Two more followed within minutes, setting up for live broadcasts that would be seen by millions of viewers. Cameras are rolling, Ryan announced, monitoring the news feeds. We're live on 3 networks. Olivia activated the PA system one final time. Agent Davidson, media representatives are now present. Operation Lighthouse is prepared to surrender peacefully. We will exit the building in 60 seconds with our hands visible and weapons secured. The team moved to the warehouse's main entrance, where they had arranged their weapons in a neat display to show they posed no threat. Olivia led the way, her hands raised and clearly visible as she stepped into the bright spotlights that illuminated the building's entrance. I am Lieutenant Commander Olivia Westbrook, she announced in a clear voice that would be heard on live television. Yesterday, I was dishonorably discharged for discovering evidence of treason within our naval command structure. Tonight, that evidence has been made public, and we surrender ourselves to federal authorities to face whatever charges they wish to bring. The arrest was anticlimactic compared to the drama that had led to it. Federal agents approached with professional efficiency, securing each team member with zip-tie restraints while reading them their rights. The entire process was captured on live television, creating a permanent record that would make any subsequent, quote, accidents highly suspicious. As Olivia was led toward a federal transport vehicle, she caught sight of a familiar figure among the law enforcement personnel. Admiral Harrington stood near one of the command vehicles, his face twisted with rage as he watched his carefully constructed conspiracy unravel on live television. Their eyes met across the crime scene lights and camera equipment. Harrington's expression promised retribution, but Olivia smiled in return. The Admiral might still have the power to make their lives difficult, but he no longer had the power to destroy them in silence. Lieutenant Commander Westbrook called a reporter from behind the police line. Do you have any final statement? Olivia paused as the federal agent helped her into the transport vehicle. The truth is out there now. American sailors were put at risk because of the greed and betrayal of the people sworn to protect them. Justice will be served. As the vehicle pulled away from the warehouse, Olivia watched the industrial district fade into darkness through the rear window. Operation Lighthouse had completed their mission. The conspiracy was exposed. The evidence was public. And the traitors were finally facing accountability. The war wasn't over. But the most important battle had been won. And for the first time in 2 days, Lieutenant Commander Olivia Westbrook allowed herself to believe that she might actually survive to see justice served. 6 weeks later, Olivia sat in the witness chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing room, facing a panel of senators and a gallery packed with media representatives. The hearing was being broadcast live across multiple networks, the culmination of what had become known as the Lighthouse investigation. Lieutenant Commander Westbrook, Senator Catherine Walsh addressed her formally. Please state for the record your current status with the United States Navy. I have been fully reinstated to active duty with all charges dropped and my record expunged, Olivia replied clearly. The dishonorable discharge that initiated these events has been ruled invalid and removed from all official documentation. The past 6 weeks had been a whirlwind of investigations, hearings, and revelations that had shaken the naval establishment to its core. Admiral Harrington was awaiting trial on charges of espionage, conspiracy, and treason. Commander Reynolds had been arrested at the Pentagon while attempting to destroy additional evidence. Captain Lawrence had resigned in disgrace after financial records proved his involvement in the security breaches. And the other members of Operation Lighthouse? Senator Walsh continued. All have been reinstated to their previous positions or promoted based on their exemplary service, Olivia answered. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez has been promoted to Lieutenant Commander and assigned to lead a new counterintelligence task force. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper has been awarded the Navy Cross for his undercover work exposing the conspiracy. The hearing room buzzed with murmurs of approval. Public opinion had shifted dramatically once the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. Operation Lighthouse had gone from being portrayed as rogue elements to being celebrated as heroes who had risked everything to protect national security. Lieutenant Commander Westbrook, Senator Daniel Harrison leaned forward in his chair. What would you say to critics who argue that your methods were outside proper channels and potentially dangerous to legitimate operations? Olivia had been expecting this question and had prepared her answer carefully. Senator, when the proper channels are compromised by the very people you're supposed to report to, extraordinary measures become necessary. We followed naval protocol until we discovered that our chain of command included traitors who were actively working against American interests. And the decision to go public with classified information, the information we released proved that classified security protocols were being sold to hostile actors, resulting in American casualties, Olivia replied firmly. At that point, protecting the secrecy of the conspiracy became secondary to protecting American lives. Senator Walsh nodded approvingly. The committee's investigation has confirmed that the security network exposed by Operation Lighthouse was responsible for compromising at least 12 separate operations over 2 years, resulting in the deaths of 14 American service members and unknown damage to national security interests. Olivia felt the familiar weight of those losses. Each of the 14 casualties had been someone's child, spouse, or parent, lives cut short because of greed and betrayal at the highest levels of command. What reforms do you recommend to prevent similar conspiracies in the future? Another senator asked. Enhanced security monitoring of personnel with access to classified information, rotating assignments to prevent the establishment of permanent security networks, and the creation of independent oversight bodies with the authority to investigate allegations without going through potentially compromised command structures. Olivia replied, outlining recommendations she and Operation Lighthouse had developed. After 3 hours of testimony, the hearing concluded with Senator Walsh's closing statement. The actions of Lieutenant Commander Westbrook in Operation Lighthouse represent the highest traditions of naval service, loyalty to country over personal interest, courage in the face of overwhelming opposition, and dedication to the principles that define American democracy. As Olivia left the Capitol building, she was approached by Rebecca Townsend, the former intelligence officer who had first contacted her in the Norfolk diner that seemed like a lifetime ago. How does it feel to be vindicated? Rebecca asked with a smile. Bittersweet, Olivia replied honestly. We exposed the conspiracy and brought the traitors to justice, but we can't bring back the sailors who died because of their betrayals. Morgan Fletcher would be proud, Rebecca said. His sacrifice wasn't in vain. That evening, Operation Lighthouse gathered for what would be their final meeting as an underground organization. The warehouse had been replaced by a private room at a Washington hotel, and the team members wore dress uniforms instead of tactical gear. To Operation Lighthouse, Commander Donovan raised his glass in a toast, which shone light into the darkness that threatened the integrity of our Navy. To the sailors who didn't make it home because of traitors in our ranks, Sarah added solemnly, and to proving that the system can still work when good people refuse to give up, Ryan concluded. As they shared stories and reflected on their journey from disgrace to vindication, Olivia felt a sense of completion she hadn't experienced since the morning of her discharge. The naval career that had seemed destroyed forever had not only been restored, but had led to the most important mission of her life. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Congratulations on your testimony today. New assignment briefing tomorrow at 0800. Welcome to your next mission. Naval Intelligence Director. Olivia smiled as she read the message. Operation Lighthouse might be disbanding, but the fight to protect American interests from those who would betray them would continue. And this time she would be fighting from within the system with official support and unlimited resources. 6 weeks ago, Lieutenant Commander Olivia Westbrook had walked away from Naval Station Breckenridge, with her career in ruins and her reputation destroyed. Tonight, she was one of the most respected intelligence officers in the Navy, with a new mission that would allow her to continue the work Operation Lighthouse had started. As she looked around at her fellow ghost sailors, now returned to life and service, Olivia realized that sometimes the system had to break completely before it could be rebuilt stronger than before. They had all paid a price for their integrity, but they had proven that honor and courage could still triumph over corruption and betrayal. The investigation that had lifted her from disgrace had carried her to something greater than she could have imagined. Not just personal vindication, but the chance to ensure that no other sailors would die because of traitors wearing the same uniform they had sworn to honor. Lieutenant Commander Olivia Westbrook was ready for whatever came next. 4 months into her new role as Director of Naval Intelligence, Olivia stood before the newly established Security Integrity Task Force, a dedicated team of specialists chosen for their impeccable records and unwavering commitment to naval values. The conference room at the Pentagon buzzed with focused energy as 20 of the Navy's finest security officers reviewed the latest implementation of the enhanced protocols Olivia had developed following the Lighthouse investigation. The rotating authentication system is now operational at all 17 major naval installations, reported Commander Sarah Martinez, who had been promoted again for her exceptional work in rebuilding the Navy's compromised security architecture. Every access point is now monitored by independent oversight teams who report directly to this task force, bypassing traditional chain of command when necessary. Olivia nodded with approval. And the personnel verification protocols? Fully implemented and already producing results, answered Captain Ryan Cooper, now heading the Counterintelligence Division. We've identified 3 potential security vulnerabilities at Norfolk that would have gone unnoticed under the old system. The meeting continued with detailed updates on the comprehensive security reforms that had transformed naval operations in the wake of the Harrington conspiracy. What had begun as a painful personal injustice had catalyzed the most significant overhaul of naval security protocols in decades. The system that had nearly destroyed Olivia's career was now being rebuilt under her guidance, stronger and more resistant to corruption than ever before. After the meeting, Admiral William Foster, Chief of Naval Operations, requested a private word with Olivia. As the last task force member filed out, the Admiral closed the door and turned to her with a serious expression. The President wanted me to personally express his gratitude for what you've accomplished here, Director Westbrook. The Admiral began. The reforms you've implemented are being adapted for use across all branches of the military. Your work is transforming national security at the highest levels. Thank you, sir, Olivia replied, but the credit belongs to everyone who risked everything to expose the truth, especially those who never lived to see the results. Admiral Foster nodded solemnly. I understand tomorrow is a significant day. Yes, sir. The court-martial of Admiral Harrington begins at 0900. Are you prepared for what that will entail? He still has powerful friends. Olivia met the Admiral's gaze with unwavering resolve. With respect, sir, I've already faced the worst they could do to me. I'm not concerned about what comes next. The Admiral smiled slightly. That's precisely why the President insisted on your appointment to this position, despite considerable opposition. Your file contains a note from your early career evaluation that proved prophetic. Lieutenant Westbrook demonstrates an uncommon moral courage that may someday prove more valuable than tactical brilliance. Later that evening, Olivia stood at the window of her office, watching the sun set over the Potomac. On her desk lay the final trial preparation documents for tomorrow's proceedings, the culmination of the investigation that had begun, with her noticing small discrepancies in security protocols at Breckenridge. The journey from disgraced officer to the architect of military security reform had been arduous, but the lessons learned along the way had transformed not just her career, but her understanding of true service. Her office door opened, and Commander Donovan entered with a small package. This just arrived for you, Director. It passed all security screenings. Inside the unmarked package, Olivia found a small wooden box containing a tarnished naval security pin, Captain Morgan Fletcher's service badge that had been reported lost after his transfer. Accompanying it was a handwritten note. Sometimes the locker containing the truth is one we carry within ourselves. Your courage in opening it has saved countless lives. -MF. Olivia stared at the note in disbelief. This handwriting. Morgan Fletcher is alive? Donovan's expression remained carefully neutral. Official records still list Captain Fletcher as retired due to medical reasons and living in seclusion in Montana. Perhaps someone is using his name. But they both knew what this meant. Somewhere, Morgan Fletcher was watching, perhaps still working from the shadows to protect the institution they had both sacrificed so much to defend. The next morning, as Olivia prepared to enter the courtroom where Admiral Harrington would face justice, she pinned Morgan's security badge inside her uniform jacket, a private reminder that truth, no matter how deeply buried, would eventually find the light. The courtroom fell silent as she entered, dozens of eyes following her progress to the witness stand. Among the observers, she recognized faces from every stage of her journey. Ensign Daniel Carter, who had risked his career to warn her, Rebecca Townsend, whose crucial information had connected her to Operation Lighthouse. Even Petty Officer Rodriguez, who had cut her ID card in half with such reluctance. As she took her seat facing Admiral Harrington and his defense team, Olivia felt no fear, no hesitation, only a profound certainty that this moment represented something larger than personal vindication. This was about restoring honor to an institution that had temporarily lost its way, about proving that systems could be healed when good people refused to remain silent in the face of corruption. The military prosecutor approached. Director Westbrook, please state your name and position for the record. Taking a deep breath, Olivia spoke clearly into the microphone. Director Olivia Westbrook, United States Naval Intelligence. Formerly Lieutenant Commander, Security Division, Naval Station Breckenridge. And what initially led you to discover the security breaches that implicated the defendant? Olivia looked directly at Admiral Harrington as she answered, her voice steady and confident. It began with a simple belief, sir, that those who serve must be worthy of the uniform they wear. When I noticed patterns that violated that principle, I had no choice but to investigate, regardless of the personal cost. As she detailed the evidence against the man who had tried to destroy her, Olivia reflected on the true meaning of service. Not blind obedience to authority, but unwavering commitment to the principles that authority was meant to uphold. The path of integrity was rarely the easiest one, but it was the only one that allowed one to wear the uniform with genuine pride. After the day's testimony concluded, Olivia walked alone to the National Mall, finding a quiet bench overlooking the memorials that honored generations of Americans who had served with distinction. The afternoon sun caught the new Naval Intelligence Director's insignia on her uniform, a symbol of how far she had come from that rainy day when she had walked away from Breckenridge, stripped of rank and purpose. Her phone vibrated with a message from Commander Sarah Martinez. Initial security sweep complete at Pacific Command. You were right. 3 more compromised protocols identified and neutralized. Your new system works. Olivia smiled as she replied. It works because we built it together, from the ground up, with integrity as its foundation. The setting sun cast long shadows across the mall as Olivia rose to leave, ready to continue the work of rebuilding trust in the institutions she had sworn to serve. The commander who had tried to discharge her had inadvertently set her on a path to transform the very system he had exploited. What he had seen as her greatest vulnerability, her unwavering commitment to truth, had proven to be her most powerful weapon. Sometimes, Olivia reflected, the most important battles weren't fought with weapons, but with the courage to stand alone against corruption, to risk everything for principles that transcended personal advancement. In the end, what had been hidden in her metaphorical locker wasn't evidence of wrongdoing, but something far more powerful, the uncompromising integrity that had ultimately redeemed not just her career, but the honor of the institution she had always faithfully served. The military courtroom erupted into chaos as Admiral Harrington's defense counsel abruptly requested a recess following Olivia's devastating testimony. For 3 hours, she had methodically presented evidence connecting the admiral to 12 compromised security protocols, providing irrefutable proof of his role in selling naval secrets. The precision of her analysis, backed by Operation Lighthouse's impeccable documentation, had left the 7-member military tribunal visibly disturbed by the scope of the betrayal. Director Westbrook, the lead judge, addressed her as the proceedings paused. Your testimony today represents one of the most comprehensive security breach analyses this court has ever witnessed. The tribunal commends your exceptional attention to detail and unwavering commitment to the truth. Olivia nodded respectfully. Thank you, Your Honor. The evidence speaks for itself. As she gathered her materials, Olivia noticed Admiral Harrington huddled with his legal team, his face ashen, with the realization that his carefully constructed defense was crumbling. The man who had once held the power to destroy her career with a signature now watched helplessly as she systematically dismantled his. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed around her, cameras flashing and questions overlapping in an indecipherable chorus. Naval Public Affairs officers created a protective corridor, escorting her through the media gauntlet to a secure briefing room where her team awaited. "That was masterful," Commander Donovan said as she entered. The tribunal's expressions when you connected Harrington's security access codes to the exact timestamps of the breaches. I've never seen admirals look so stunned. Sarah Martinez handed her a tablet displaying real-time news coverage. "You're trending nationally. Naval Intelligence Director delivers courtroom masterclass" is currently the top headline on 3 major networks. Ryan Cooper, monitoring communications chatter, looked up from his station. "We're picking up significant activity among Harrington's remaining allies. They're scrambling, Director." Your testimony hit harder than they anticipated. Olivia took a moment to process this information. The courtroom was just one battlefield in a larger war to restore integrity to naval operations. While she had struck a decisive blow today, experience had taught her that corrupt systems fought fiercely against exposure. "What's our intelligence on the 3 admirals connected to Harrington's network?" she asked, referring to flag officers who had thus far escaped formal charges despite suspicious connections. "Admiral Jenkins has suddenly requested emergency family leave," Ryan reported. "Admiral Westfield has accelerated his retirement paperwork, and Admiral Garrison has transferred $1.7 million to offshore accounts in the past 48 hours. "They're running," Sarah observed. "No," Olivia corrected, studying the data patterns on Ryan's screen. "They're preparing a counterattack. This level of coordinated activity suggests they've activated some kind of contingency plan." She turned to her team, the same group that had once operated as ghosts from a warehouse hideout, now transformed into the most elite security unit in naval service. "We need to identify what they're planning." Sarah, deep dive on Jenkins' communications. Ryan, follow Garrison's money trail. Commander Donovan, I need everything we have on Westfield's recent security accesses. As her team dispersed to their assignments, Olivia's secure phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. "What you found in your locker was just the beginning. Check Sublevel 7, Vault C, Box 1142. The Fletcher Protocol remains active. A friend." The message sent a chill through her. Sublevel 7 housed the Navy's most classified historical operations archives. Records so sensitive, they existed only in hard copy, protected by security measures that made Fort Knox look like an open house. Box 1142 referenced the military intelligence operation from World War II, where the United States had secretly interrogated high-value German prisoners, a historical code that only someone with deep naval intelligence knowledge would recognize. And the Fletcher Protocol, a contingency plan Morgan had theorized but never formally documented, designed to expose deep-seated corruption even if the whistleblower was neutralized. Olivia made her decision instantly. "Change of plans," she announced to her team. "I need emergency access to Sublevel 7. 3 hours later, wearing the specialized security credentials required for the Naval Archives, Olivia descended in a secure elevator escorted by 2 senior archivists. Sublevel 7 existed in whispered rumors among intelligence officers, a temperature-controlled labyrinth housing the most sensitive naval operations documentation from the past century. "Director, this is highly irregular," the chief archivist noted as they proceeded through a series of biometric checkpoints. "These archives require special congressional authorization." "Which I received 30 minutes ago," Olivia replied, displaying the emergency authorization signed by the Secretary of the Navy himself, a document that had required calling in every favor she had accumulated in her new position. The vault resembled a bank from another era, walls of metal boxes organized in a complex numerical system. The archivists led her to Vault C, where Box 1142 waited, sealed with security tape that hadn't been disturbed in years. "We'll need privacy," Olivia informed them. Once alone, she carefully broke the seals and opened the metal container. Inside lay a single manila folder, unmarked except for a small anchor symbol in the corner. Morgan Fletcher's personal marking system. With steady hands, she opened the file to find documents dating back 5 years, meticulously detailing the formation of what Fletcher had codenamed the Anchor Division, a shadow network of high-ranking officers who had systematically compromised naval security for financial gain. The documentation was extraordinary. Fletcher had traced the corruption to its roots, identifying the moment when Harrington and his associates had first betrayed their oaths. More shocking were the names, not just the 3 admirals on her watch list, but 12 other high-ranking officers and civilian officials, including 2 who currently served on the Joint Chiefs Advisory Staff. But it was the final page that stopped her breath. A handwritten note from Fletcher addressed directly to her. "Olivia, if you're reading this, you've done what I could not, broken through their defenses and exposed the corruption that nearly destroyed our Navy. But the final task remains. The enclosed drive contains irrefutable evidence implicating every member of the Anchor Division. It's been hidden where only someone with your specific access pattern would think to look. Remember where we first discussed the theoretical vulnerabilities in the Breckenridge security grid? That's where you'll find it. Be careful. They will stop at nothing now. You were always the most capable officer I ever served with. Finish what I started." Morgan, taped to the note was a small key with a numbered tag that Olivia instantly recognized. A locker key from Naval Station Breckenridge's officers' fitness center. Her own locker. The realization struck her like physical force. The evidence had been hidden in her gym locker at Breckenridge all along, before her discharge, before Operation Lighthouse, waiting for her to discover it. Morgan had anticipated everything, including the possibility that he would be neutralized before he could act. Securing the documents in her briefcase, Olivia contacted her team. "I need immediate transport to Naval Station Breckenridge, Priority Alpha, and I need it completely off official channels." "What's happening, Director?" Donovan asked, concern evident in his voice. "The game just changed," she replied. "And we're running out of time." The unmarked helicopter touched down at a rarely used training field 3 miles from Breckenridge's main facilities shortly after midnight. Dressed in standard-issue physical training gear rather than her director's uniform, Olivia blended with the small group of night shift personnel heading for the fitness center after their rotation. The facility was nearly empty at this hour, with only 2 enlisted sailors using the weight equipment and a duty officer checking maintenance logs. Olivia nodded casually to them as she made her way to the women's locker room, her heart pounding despite her outward calm. Locker 1142, the same number as the archive box, had been hers during her entire tenure at Breckenridge. A locker she had emptied on the day of her discharge, or so she had thought. Making sure she was alone, Olivia inserted the key and turned it slowly. Inside was exactly what would be expected: emptiness. But Morgan had trained her too well to take anything at face value. Examining the interior carefully, she noticed subtle tool marks on the back panel. Applying pressure to the upper corners in sequence, she felt a satisfying click as a false back swung open, revealing a sealed waterproof pouch containing a data drive and another handwritten note. "The commander tried to discharge you because he found part of what I hid here. But he never found this. The complete evidence set that will bring down not just a few corrupt officers, but the entire network extending into the Pentagon and beyond. Trust no one with this except the team you've gathered yourself. When the moment comes, release everything simultaneously through all channels. It's the only way to prevent them from containing it. MF." Securing the drive in a hidden pocket, Olivia carefully restored the locker to its original appearance and headed for the exit. As she pushed through the door to the main gym area, she found herself face to face with Commander Reynolds, the man who had handed her discharge papers 6 months earlier. Time seemed to freeze as recognition dawned in his eyes. "Westbrook, what the hell are you doing here?" Drawing on years of operational training, Olivia maintained a perfect composure. "Commander, I'm here on official business from Naval Intelligence regarding the Harrington trial." My credentials were cleared through main security. Reynolds, eyes narrowed suspiciously. "At midnight? In the gym?" "Following up on evidence locations requires thoroughness, Commander. Something I learned during my time under your command." The subtle reminder of his involvement in her unjust discharge hung between them. Reynolds' hand drifted toward his secure phone. "I wouldn't," Olivia advised quietly. "My presence here is fully authorized by the Secretary." Making that call would only implicate you further in a conspiracy the whole nation is now watching. Uncertainty flickered across Reynolds, faced the calculation of a man weighing diminishing options. Finally, he stepped aside. The Harrington trial is just the beginning, isn't it? You're not stopping there. Justice doesn't have convenient boundaries, Commander, Olivia replied, walking past him toward the exit. You taught me that when you discharged me for doing my duty. As she left the building, Olivia immediately contacted her team. I have it. Initiate protocol sunlight. We go live in 6 hours. The drive contained exactly what Morgan had promised. The complete architecture of the conspiracy, meticulously documented with financial records, communication logs, and security breach timestamps. Most damning were recorded conversations between members of the Anchor Division, discussing which naval operations to compromise and how to distribute the proceeds of their treason. Back at the Secure Operations Center in Washington, Olivia and her team worked through the night, preparing the evidence for public release. By dawn, they had organized the most comprehensive exposure of military corruption in American history, ready to broadcast across 27 different platforms simultaneously. Director Sarah said as they made final preparations, "You should know that security monitoring shows unusual movement patterns at Pentagon access points. 12 senior officers, including all 3 admirals on our watch list, have convened an emergency meeting in the secure conference wing. They know something's coming," Ryan added. Our sources report that the Secretary of Defense has been called to join them, allegedly for a critical national security briefing. Olivia understood immediately. They're attempting to classify everything as a matter of national security. Create a information blackout before we can release the evidence. Can they do that? Sarah asked. They can try, Olivia replied, but we're not using military channels for this release. That's why I developed the Civilian Partnership Network. Over the previous months, Olivia had quietly built relationships with key journalists, congressional oversight committees, and independent watchdog organizations, creating a distribution system for critical information that couldn't be shut down by military authority. It's time, she announced, checking her watch. Execute Protocol Sunlight. All channels. Across the country, media organizations simultaneously received comprehensive evidence packages detailing the Anchor Division's activities. Congressional leaders found detailed briefings in their secure communications systems. Law enforcement agencies received actionable intelligence with jurisdiction guidelines already prepared. Within 30 minutes, the story had exploded across every major news platform. Naval corruption scandal expands. Top Pentagon officials implicated in massive security breach screamed headlines nationwide. Emergency congressional sessions were called. The president himself made an unscheduled appearance in the White House briefing room, announcing the appointment of a special prosecutor with full investigative authority. At the Pentagon, armed federal agents appeared at the secure conference room where the Anchor Division had gathered, executing simultaneous arrest warrants for 15 senior officers, including the 3 admirals who had been attempting to orchestrate a cover-up. Olivia watched the operations unfold from her command center, monitoring real-time updates as the conspiracy she had first glimpsed through security anomalies at Breckenridge collapsed completely. What had begun with her discharge had culminated in the most significant reform of military leadership in modern history. Her secure phone buzzed with a message from the Secretary of the Navy. The President requests your presence at the White House. Immediate. 3 hours later, Olivia stood in the Oval Office alongside the surviving members of Operation Lighthouse. The President, flanked by the Secretary of Defense and newly appointed Joint Chiefs Chairman, addressed them with solemn gratitude. What you have done, the President stated, represents the highest form of patriotism. You risked everything, your careers, your reputations, your very freedom, to protect the integrity of an institution you had sworn to serve. The American people may never know the full extent of your sacrifice, but those of us in this room do. The Secretary of Defense stepped forward, holding a document bearing the presidential seal. Director Westbrook, in recognition of your extraordinary service, the President has authorized the establishment of a new division within Naval Intelligence, the Integrity Assurance Command. You are hereby appointed as its first admiral, with full authority to implement the security reforms you have developed. Stunned silence fell over the room. A promotion to admiral, Jumping 3 ranks was unprecedented in modern naval history. "Sir," Olivia managed finally, "I'm honored, but this accomplishment belongs to everyone who stood with me when the easier path would have been silence. We are recognizing all members of Operation Lighthouse," the president assured her. "But your leadership in the face of personal destruction demonstrated a quality we desperately need at the highest levels of military command: the courage to stand alone for what's right, regardless of the cost." Later that evening, as the newly promoted Admiral Westbrook stood on the balcony of her apartment overlooking the Washington Monument, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she had walked away from Breckenridge in disgrace, her career and reputation seemingly destroyed forever. Now she stood at the pinnacle of naval intelligence, entrusted with reforming the very system that had nearly crushed her. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unlisted number. "The commander tried to discharge you, then saw what was hidden in your locker. But what he never understood was that the real treasure wasn't the evidence. It was the officer with the integrity to use it. Well done, Admiral." M. Olivia smiled, tucking the phone away without replying. Wherever Morgan Fletcher was, she sensed he was finally at peace, knowing that his faith in her had been vindicated in ways neither of them could have imagined. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Opening it, she found her entire team: Sarah, Ryan, Donovan, and all the members of what had once been Operation Lighthouse, standing in the hallway with champagne and the determined expressions of people who wouldn't take no for an answer. "Admiral," Sarah said with mock formality, "the fleet requests permission to celebrate with our commanding officer." Olivia laughed, opening the door wider. "Permission granted, Commander." As her team filed in, no longer ghosts operating from the shadows but decorated naval officers recognized for their extraordinary service, Olivia felt a profound sense of completion. The system that had failed them had been reborn through their courage, stronger and more resilient than before. Later, as conversation flowed around her apartment, Ryan raised his glass. "To Admiral Westbrook, who taught us that sometimes you have to risk everything to save what you love." "Not to me," Olivia countered, raising her own glass. "To integrity, the compass that guides us when all other landmarks have disappeared." Quote. The next morning, Admiral Olivia Westbrook walked up the steps of the Naval Intelligence Headquarters, where the newly commissioned Integrity Assurance Command would begin its work. Personnel snapped to attention as she passed, their salutes reflecting not just protocol but genuine respect for what she represented. In her new office, she found a small package waiting on her desk. Opening it, she discovered a tarnished security badge, her original Breckenridge identification that had been cut in half on the day of her discharge, now carefully restored and mounted in a simple frame with an inscription: "Sometimes being broken is the beginning of being whole. Sometimes being discharged is the beginning of your greatest service. Sometimes losing everything is how you find what truly matters." The note was unsigned, but she recognized the handwriting of Petty Officer Rodriguez, the gate guard who had been forced to destroy her ID 6 months earlier. Placing the framed badge on her desk where visitors would see it, Admiral Westbrook opened her computer to begin the day's work. The rebuilding of naval intelligence would be a monumental task, but she had assembled a team forged in adversity and proven in courage. Officers who understood that true strength came not from rank or position, but from unwavering commitment to the principles they had sworn to defend. Outside her window, the morning sun reflected off the Potomac, its light touching the memorials to those who had served throughout American history. Among them now would be the unwritten story of Operation Lighthouse, sailors who had navigated the darkest waters of betrayal to bring their ship safely home. The commander had tried to discharge her, then discovered what was hidden in her locker. But in doing so, he had inadvertently revealed the most powerful weapon in naval service: an officer who valued truth above career, integrity above advancement, and service above self. In trying to destroy Olivia Westbrook, he had instead created Admiral Westbrook, whose legacy would transform the institution they had both served, but only one had truly honored. As she prepared for her first briefing as Admiral, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From midnight security patrols at Breckenridge to commanding the most sensitive intelligence operation in the Navy. The path had been painful, but she wouldn't change a step of it. For it was in losing everything that she had discovered what could never be taken away: the uncompromising integrity that had ultimately redeemed not just her career, but the honor of the institution she had always faithfully served. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.